21 minutes after the hour, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for listening today. Joined now by United States Senator Tom Cotton. Congratulations, Senator, on the birth of your son. The entire audience joins me in wishing you and your wife well on that happy occasion.
Well, thanks very much, Hugh. I appreciate it. I'm sorry that I missed last Monday night, but my wife is well along the path of labor at the moment, so I hope your audience understands.
Well, we give passes for things like that, and congratulations. This is a terrific thing. Now, having said that, as of 8:22 Eastern Standard Time on May 5th, 2015, it appears as though the United States Senate is acquiescing in President Obama's decision to allow Iran to become a nuclear state. Am I wrong?
I wouldn't go that far, Hugh. What we still have is Democratic intransigence to have votes on the serious amendments that I and so many other senators have offered. Amendments that would say simply what the president has said, that Iran needs to close its underground fortified nuclear bunker, that Iran needs to fully disclose the past work on weaponization of its nuclear program, that Iran needs to recognize Israel's right to exist before it gets the very weapon that would allow it to make Israel no longer exist. The Democrats continue to obstruct on that. Today, Mitch McConnell filed for cloture, which I don't object to because he is in the position today that he would have been in last week, that he would be in next week. As long as the Democrats are objecting to having any amendments on the floor, then Senator McConnell is always going to have to face a choice between filing cloture, letting the process drag on endlessly when we have many other priorities, or in the end pulling the bill. So what he did was a reasonable response in reaction to the Democrats' intransigence. But the responsibility here lies solely with the Democrats who don't want to take a stand on the record on these issues.
And Senator Cotton, what I just was talking about with Eli Lake, and I talked earlier with your colleague Senator Perdue about, he's going to vote for the amendment-less Corker-Cardin bill. But I've begun to wonder, are we better off without anything except clarity about the condemnation of the Obama administration's acquiescence? What do you think about that? I genuinely don't have an opinion on this yet.
Well, first to you, I don't want to concede the premise that the choice is a unamended Corker-Menendez bill. I know Senator Corker is still working with the Democrats, doing yeoman's work, sure, to try to get amendments up and voted on this week. Simply because Senator McConnell filed cloture does not prohibit us from continuing to vote on amendments if we can reach an agreement with the Democrats. That's one reason why Senator Rubio and I filed amendments on the so-called left-hand side of the amendment tree last week to try to force the issue. So I wouldn't say that that's necessarily going to be the only choice. But I am deeply worried that the president is submitting a nuclear arms agreement with an Islamist terrorist sponsoring regime, not as a treaty that requires him to get 67 votes, but that would only require him to get 34 votes under this process to block an override of his veto on this deal. That turns the constitutional presumption on its head. But again, that's not something that Mitch McConnell or Bob Corker, or for that matter, Bob Menendez has done. That's something that Barack Obama has done, saying that he's going to cut a nuclear arms agreement with an Islamist terrorist sponsoring regime and not submit it to Congress for a vote of approval, but simply a review period.
Well, so that takes me back. If, in fact, you don't get the amendments and this is what we're left with, I'm thinking now, if I'm a House of Representatives member, one of your old friends, Mike Pompeo or somebody like that, do I actually vote for this? Are we better off with an unamended Corker-Menendez than with the status quo where everyone has clarity about what the president's conceded? Because you're now a father, and the possibility of the flash in the night and the Islamists with a nuclear weapon is going to be in your son's lifetime.
Regrettably, Hugh, that's the possibility that we face given the very dangerous proposal the president made last month and the continued concessions we've made. Let me give you one example of an amendment that the Democrats are blocking. Senator Rubio gets a lot of attention for the amendment that says Iran must recognize Israel's right to exist. Senator Rubio has offered a second amendment that would simply say the White House has to certify that any final agreement with Iran matches the fact sheet that they put out last month. And the Democrats object to that because they know that the president is already walking away from his own fact sheet. So we'll see what the final bill is. More importantly, we'll have to see what the final deal is with Iran. And it's not even settled that they're going to be able to reach a final deal. If you look at what Ayatollah Khamenei and Hassan Rouhani and Javad Zarif and several IRGC generals have said about what they will and will not accept in terms of sanctions and inspections regimes, all of which contradict exactly what President Obama has been saying.
Is there any stiffening of the spine among our allies? I know Russia is a lost cause, and I don't really know what the PRC thinks about this, but what do France and Great Britain, and Britain goes and votes on Thursday, and signs are looking better for Cameron, but does anyone say, no, we've really become an embarrassment to ourselves at this point?
It was widely reported last month that the French were drawing a much harder line on Iran than was the president. I mean, think about that. All we're asking President Obama to do is be as tough as the socialist government of France. The countries you just mentioned, though, are only the negotiating parties, but there are also many other countries whose interests are deeply implicated here. Israel is clearly one, and we all know where Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israeli people stand on it after their election in March. But also all of the Sunni states. I've had numerous conversations with leaders of these countries who have the gravest concerns that a Shiite Persian country is going to get nuclear arms technology, and said that they'll have to essentially get the same thing. So we're starting an arms race, a nuclear arms race, in the world's most volatile region.
So I just generally am astounded by this turn of events, but I'm astonished that there isn't more discussion about it. And I compliment you for pushing it forward again and again and again. Off the floor, in the cloakroom, do any of your colleagues on the Democratic side say, I just don't know what the president is doing? Does anyone have an explanation for this?
Hugh, I prefer to keep my private conversations private with my colleagues to foster healthy dialogue and cooperation to try to reach mutually acceptable goals. But, there's a substantial part of the Democratic Party, not just in the Senate, not just in the administration, but all around the country, that really does view the United States as part of the problem in the world. And they think a retreat from the world, and in particular a retreat from the Middle East, is best not only for the United States, but best for the region. And that if Iran is a rising power, they'll help solve a lot of problems in the Middle East. I think that's fundamentally flawed. It underestimates the totalitarian, theocratic nature of the Iranian regime, but there are many Democrats, not just in the Senate, but all around the country that believe that.
That is the fundamental problem, the misjudgment about the nature of the regime. A budget passed today, and in it was a new plus-up in the OCO. Is that defense budget sufficient for the day that we are in, Senator Cotton? I think you voted for the budget, did you not?
I did vote for the budget today, Hugh. It is not yet sufficient, but it is moving in the right direction. Almost $100 billion of new defense spending, which is so critical to stop the shrinking size of our Army, our Navy, our Air Force, to invest in the kind of readiness we need, whether it's training ranges or flight hours, to continue to modernize our forces, in particular our naval and our air forces. We still have a ways to go. It's not yet the defense budget that I would like to see, or frankly that a lot of Republicans would like to see, but it is a good down payment and first step in getting our military back to where we were. I would liken it to the emergency spending bill that Jimmy Carter passed in 1980 that helped lead to the Reagan buildup.
I hope you're right. Senator Tom Cotton, again, congratulations. Good luck in making progress on the Iran bill. Stand firm there. Someone's got to against this collapse of will in the West. I'll be right back. America with Carly Fiorina, candidate for the presidency, is making many of these.